Welcome in, Slumpbusters. Welcome in, Alabama fans. Welcome in, distraught Cincinnati Bearcats fans. All we can say to you is, you did it. You did it. You didn't do much. You didn't cover. I was a little bit more optimistic that you would have covered. But Cincinnati, cheers to you. The most I'll say is, come on. We expected them to get blown out. But so would have Pac-12 school been blown out. So would have a Big 10 school, Big 12 school. You know, Cincinnati, 2 years of work. Luke Fickell, that team deserved it. So you just went against the bluest of blue bloods. You went against Will Anderson. You went against Heisman Trophy winner Bryce Young, Nick Saban, Jolly St. Nick out there. So don't beat yourself up. But Kyle, what was your thoughts on this 27-6 ass kicking by the Alabama Crimson Tide?
Yeah, 27-6, and it wasn't even that close if you really look at it deeper in the box score. Yeah, this was Alabama rolling like I thought they would and like we all thought they would. Why? Because Alabama is a factory and Alabama has five-star players up and down the field, and Jamison Williams can get hurt and John Mechie cannot play in the game. And it's just like, whatever. We'll just hand the ball to Brian Robinson for 28 carries and he's going to run. Early on in the game, he averaged 7.4 yards per carry on his first 14 carries, and his longest run was only 16 yards at the start of the game. Like, he just kept going 7 yards, 8 yards, 10 yards, 12 yards. And that was just the way that Alabama ended up beating Cincinnati. It's just the way they chose to beat Cincinnati. That there was a little time in the third quarter where I thought Alabama was like trying to give it back, where the only way Cincinnati wasn't going to win. By the way, Luke Fickell, not part of the punting is for cowards club. Luke Fickell had multiple opportunities to go for it on his own side of the field, still in the third quarter, embrace his inner Cliff Kingsbury or his inner Brandon Staley or his inner Lane Kiffin. That's what I was thinking of. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. He did not do it. He played it straight, and straight up, Alabama's just bigger, stronger, faster than Cincinnati. We knew that coming into the game, and we got to see it happen for what feels like the fifth year in a row.
To kind of emphasize that point, what was great about those old Boise State teams? You look back to the Fiesta Bowl when they took down Oklahoma. You have the hook and ladder. You have the Statue of Liberty. You have them totally emptying out the bag to get that victory. And when you talk about not going in for it on fourth downs in your own territory, that definitely does kind of come off as a, well, don't want to call him a coward, but a cowardly move there to not take that extra chance because you're already down. You're already the almost 2 touchdown underdog in that one. So you might as well just try some stuff, go for it and see what happens. But I don't blame him for being a little hesitant because when you look at these third down numbers alone, 2 for 12 on third down for Cincinnati, they were just having so much trouble moving the ball. One thing I think that really hurt them is I felt like they gave up on the run too quick in that game. Like, you look at the opening drive they had after the second half, or the start of the second half there, and it did seem to be a little bit more balanced. You started to see a little bit more runs from forward. You saw those like quick little bubble screens with Desmond Ridder, but the problem is you saw too many of those quick little throws from Desmond Ridder. You saw them playing it too conservatively. Desmond Ridder is a guy that's probably going to play on Sundays at one point in his life just because he's probably, he's like a mid-level talent.
In the same way that Mike Glennon has also played on Sundays in his life.
So, I mean, he is at least an NFL talent, an NFL backup caliber talent. That's what these people were saying about him. But he just needs to kind of like learn the different levels of coverage you're going to see. So, for example, this season, he saw a bunch of AAC open. Today, he's got to see SEC open, which is going to be miles different from NFL open. And he just wasn't really pushing the envelope to his guys or being able to deliver clean throws to them. There was like some easy throws he was missing. If bare minimum, if you're going to win this game, if you're going to stay in this game, you have to take what they give you. And they were giving him little throws here and there, but when it came down to third down, drop back, Alabama was just overwhelming them. They were just swarming with their defensive pass rush there, and the Cincinnati line just couldn't hold up. One thing I was thinking throughout the game, and credit to Cincinnati too, their defense to only hold Alabama to 17 points through 3 quarters, I think is very impressive for their defense. Of course, the floodgates eventually open up, and whenever a small school is facing a big school like this, it's almost like when you have a boiling pan of like pasta there where you're just like, don't overflow. We got the lid here just in case, but don't overflow. And eventually it will overflow on you despite your best efforts sometimes. So let's get a wooden spoon. Learn that life hack via TikTok there. But for them, it's just size. It's just recruiting. It's just like you look at it like I was thinking while watching the game, because I had to watch without commentary, man, they're sending a lot of exotic blitzes, a lot of DB pass rushes. But then I thought about it a little bit. Are these just their linebackers? Are these just their defensive linemen? I'm thinking they're sending all these small guys to blitz after Bryce Young. I'm thinking towards the end of the game, oh, that's just their guys.
Yeah, of course, because Alabama's players are all bigger, stronger, faster. And we talked about this when we did the game preview. Like, we knew this was the case. We knew going into the game that they were bigger, stronger, faster. It's why our entire conversation hedged on, are they going to cover a 2-touchdown spread or not? Like, we knew that was the case. We knew they were outmatched. And I know Cincinnati's had a really great run for the last 2 years, but the difference between outmatched in college football and outmatched in the NFL is certainly a bigger level of outmatched. It's why, like, I think there's only 1 point spread this weekend in the NFL. That's 14 points. I think it's the Jaguars and the Patriots. So there's that different level of being outmatched. But the thing Cincinnati did well was, like you said, they were really good at keeping Alabama from scoring touchdowns during the game when Alabama ran the ball down the field pretty quickly on them a couple times with Brian Robinson and using Jamison Williams and Bryce Young having like backwards pitches for 25 yards and weird plays like that. Like once they got into the red zone, Cincinnati's red zone defense was really good once it got into the short field, and Alabama forced, I believe it was the field goal in the first half to make it 10-3. Then Bama missed a field goal. And then when it was right towards the end, they kicked another field goal. But I think Alabama only had 2 red zone touchdowns, 2 field goals, and a missed field goal, which for 5 trips to the red zone, that's about as good as you can ask. Like Georgia had 0 red zone stops on Alabama in the SEC championship. So, it's as good as you can ask Cincinnati to do. And I thought Cincinnati was playing well in this game. And then they came back from halftime and said Cincinnati had the fewest yards of offense of any team in a single half in the history of the college football playoff.
Why they got to do our boys like that? Why you got to do our boys like that?
I thought they were playing great. And even though they were being outgained like 300-70 at the time.
Again, I joked about it here in the intro. Like, you look at Alabama's track record against some of their first round opponents in the CFP. It could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse. This wasn't Hawaii versus Georgia from the Sugar Bowl back in the mid-2000s. This wasn't that level of bad. It was about on par with what we saw from Notre Dame last year. Yeah. Probably even better. Just from a standpoint defensively, they were holding them. They were sticking with them.
Notre Dame did backdoor cover the spread last year. So I think Notre Dame slightly gets the edge on that.
Slightly, but for a large point of this game, I thought it was actually a game for a little bit. Like, you can make the little argument in your head, okay, if they score a touchdown here, then suddenly the complexity of this game is completely shifted. Unfortunately, they just couldn't score on Alabama. They couldn't get that touchdown. And that just shows Alabama is, I believe, a top 10 red zone defense. So that comes into play during this game of like, you haven't faced a defense this good. You haven't faced a defense this big, this solid. And to their credit, they didn't have the disastrous play. They had 0 turnovers in this game. They just weren't really pushing it enough to even make it risky. And I think that's just what you gotta have to do when you're the underdog. Yeah. When no one's giving you a chance, you kind of just have to risk it to get the biscuit. You gotta go a little Bruce Arians with it.
Yeah, there was a moment where it was 17-6, and there was 6 minutes left in the third quarter, and it was 4th and 5 at their own 35-yard line, and they punt back to Alabama. And when they punt back, in my mind, I'm thinking that might have been your best chance to get back, was having to go for it there, because score or not score, I thought Alabama was going to hold the ball for like 6 minutes right after that. It felt like, okay, regardless of how many points Alabama scores, you could be down 2 scores, you could be down 3 scores. Bama's probably going to hold this ball for a good 5-6 minutes. They'll get it to the fourth quarter, and then you'll get the ball back, and you need to score on basically every one of your possessions the rest of the way. And so that's kind of doing the algorithm in my head where I'm like, yeah, maybe Alabama gets the ball to 35 and maybe they score, but I think if you're going to play them straight up, you kind of have to do some of the trick stuff because going in you're an underdog, and it was unfortunate they didn't. What happened immediately after was Bryce Young let them back into the game with the interception, and then they didn't score. I think it got to like 4th and 29 after the Bryce Young interception or something. And
too, I want to point this out because we went over this in the preview. Brooks, the wide receiver who was subbing in for Mechie, immediately game changer on that little high-low crossing route that they pulled together. he just was so wide open. It's just so ridiculous how Alabama could just have these 5-star guys come out of nowhere and just instantly make an impact on the team. Hell, they did a good job on Jamison Williams. It just, there's moral victories here. There's moral victories if you're Cincinnati, and that's really all you have to go off of after a game like this.
Well, if you're Cincinnati, for Cincinnati, you're playing with house money at this point. The fact you're here is your championship. Like if you win, it's one of the great stories in the history of college football. But everything else is like you've already accomplished more than anyone thought possible for a Group of 5 team. I
was so impressed. They were wrapping up well, great tackles. They were playing good fundamental football. It's just you're facing a better team. You were outgunned, and we'll see how Cincinnati is able to do moving forward. I think this is a big thing for their school regardless. You were in the CFP. You got some exposure. Some recruits that are thinking about you are going to be looking at, Cincinnati, Luke Fickell. I remember seeing them against Alabama back in the day.
Cincinnati already has a top 15 class. They have a top 15 class for next year.
It's important, and this is the type of exposure we were hoping for Group of 5 schools. And Cincinnati, congratulations on setting the standard. Now, hopefully in the future, we get some crazy upset a la March Madness when Virginia lost to a 16 seed, something crazy like that back in the day. But all right, guys, well, let us know in your comments what this means for Alabama as we're recording here before the Georgia-Michigan game. So if you're watching this after that game, drop below your predictions in the comments below. Leave a like on this video, helps us get out there to more people for their viewing pleasure, your viewing pleasure, and the ability to bust the slump with the Slumpbuster podcast. Juju Talk Sports, Skylar Ledbetter. We will see you next time.
And go Dogs.